Hi there, welcome back to Haguin School. Today we will be doing a past year walkthrough of Cambridge International AS and A-Level Computer Science for Paper 1 Theory Fundamentals. We will be doing the 9618/12 variant for the October/November 2024 series. For this walkthrough, you need a question paper as well as the mark scheme. Feel free to download them from my platform whereby I have all the variants for the 9618 exam including the specimen paper. The download link is in the description below. And now, let's get started. Complete the truth table for the logic expression. For this question, we can start by labeling all the intermediate state first. For example, A saw B is state D here, and then B saw C is state E here, and then A and B saw C is state F here. Take note that we will always do the expression of the inner bracket first before going to the outer bracket. And finally, we have the final state X, which is the whole equation here. So I will label D, E, and F first. The next step is straightforward. We just have to fill up all the intermediate state here. So let's start with the first row of D. D is equal to A saw B. And since both A and B are 0, the state will be 0 here. Then we can just repeat the step for all the other rows for A saw B. To save some time, I have filled up all the remaining rows here. Next, for E will be B saw C. Since the first row of B and C are 0 as well, therefore the first row for E will be 0 also. Then we will fill in the remaining states also based on the value of B and C. Then we have state F, which is A and B saw C, which is basically A and E. Looking at both A and E are 0, the first row will be 0 as well. Then for the subsequent rows, we will just fill up the values based on the column A and column E here, resulting in these values here. Finally, for X, it will be just D nan F. So we will use the value from column D and column F. Since both D and F are 0, 0 nan 0 will result in 1 for the first row of X here. Then as usual, we will repeat the same process for the remaining rows resulting in the solution here. Draw the logic circuit for the logic expression. As usual, we will draw the logic circuit of the inner bracket first. So I've done some numbering here to help you understand better. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. So we will draw a logic circuit based on this numbering here. Let's start with number 1 here, which is Q or NOT R here. So we'll just draw like this. R go through a NOT gate and then to a OR gate here. Q will feed directly to the OR gate here. Next will be P saw Q here. So resulting in this drawing here. Then we'll make sure that the output of 1 and 2 go into a SAW gate here. So it will be something like this. Finally, P at the latest output will go into a NAND gate as shown here. Make sure you connect the output to W as well. This question might look complicated at first, but once you break them down to steps, it's actually quite doable. Embedded systems are used in many electronic devices. Describe the drawbacks of embedded systems. For this question, my tip would be, remember this washing machine here. So what is the drawback of the embedded system of this washing machine? First, repairing requires a specialist. For example, if your washing machine is spoiled, normally you need to get a skilled technician to come and fix it. Next, it's difficult for the user to program or change or update the firmware. It's actually quite difficult for you to make any changes to the firmware of the washing machine at your home. Finally, the functionality cannot be changed or extended easily. In general, for this type of question, you'll first look at all the marks awarded. For this question, it's 3 marks. So having 3 main points are sufficient to score 3 full marks here. For B, an embedded system has dynamic RAM DRAM. Identify one benefit of using DRAM instead of static RAM in an embedded system. This is the typical question of comparison between DRAM and SRAM. You can just write DRAM is less expensive to manufacture or purchase than SRAM in the embedded system. For C, give 2 differences between erasable programmable ROM and electrically erasable programmable ROM. Actually, the definition itself already gives you the hint of that difference, which is the word electrical itself. We can write EPROM uses ultraviolet light to erase data, while EEPROM uses an electrical signal to do this. Next, EPROM has to be removed from the circuit board when changing the data, while EEPROM remains in the circuit when the data is changed. This is the major difference between EPROM and EEPROM. Make sure you remember this. One has to be removed to change data and the other one is not required to do so. A student has a computer. The computer is designed using the von Neumann model for a computer system. Complete the table by describing the purpose of each of the given registers. This is the typical definition question. If you memorize all the definition, it's actually 3 marks question. By the way, if you are taking my fast track program, you can see that for each question, I will list down the chapter and their respective topic name. You may go through the topic again in my program if you are unable to answer certain questions at this point of time. So for program counter, you can write stores the address of the next instruction to be fetched or executed. And next, for memory address register, the definition is already in the name itself, which is memory address. We will write store the address of the memory location where data will be read from or written to. And next will be memory data register. For this one here, you can just write stores the data read from the address in the MAR. And finally, for index register will be stores a number that will be added to the operand to form the address of the data. In question 8 later, I will show you some example of how index register is being used as well. The students needs to connect the computer to a monitor that has a screen resolution of 20560 times 1600 pixels. The monitor also has built-in speakers. The computer has a video graphics array, VGA port, and a high-definition multimedia interface HDMI port. Explain the benefits of connecting the monitor to the computer using the HDMI port instead of the VGA port. This is a 4 marks question, so we can just list down 4 main advantages of HDMI over VGA. So first, HDMI has faster transfer rates than VGA. Next, HDMI supports the high resolution of the monitor. At the same time, HDMI supports video and audio transfers between computer and monitor speakers. Take note that VGA only supports video but not audio. Finally, HDMI is less prone to error. For C, the computer has an operating system OS. One of the key management tasks of the OS is process management. Describe the process management task performed by an OS. One of the most important things that process management does is manage the scheduling of processes. Next, it also allocates which resources the processes require, and then it allows multitasking. Finally, it does resolution of conflicts when 2 processes require the same resource. A program is written in a high-level language by a team of 3 programmers using an integrated development environment IDE. Describe how the programmers can use the debugging features of a typical IDE during the development of the program. Since this is a 4-mark question, you can write 2 features and then elaborate each feature to get 2 marks for each feature. We can start with single stepping to run the program 1 line at a time. So 1 feature and then 1 explanation. Next, set breakpoints to run the code up with a set line and then check the status to get another 2 marks for this question here. The programmers created a new program library while developing the program. Describe the benefits to the programmers of creating a program library. To get 3 full marks, we can start with subroutines can be shared. This is the major benefit of using a program library. Then we can elaborate further by adding without having to rewrite or retest them, which saves the programmer's time. And finally, we can write individual programmers can contribute their specialisms to the library. The file containing the final program code will be sent by email for beta testing. Identify one security method that can be used to protect the program code from unauthorized access during email transfer. Explain how your chosen method protects the program code. If you look at the diagram on the right here, the easiest method will be just using encryption. Then we can just write down the high-level process of encryption. So for example, file contents are converted to ciphertext. And then if intercepted, the data cannot be understood without the decryption key. A computer programmer is learning about the importance of acting ethically at work. Explain the reasons why the computer programmer needs to act ethically towards colleagues and the public. This is a common sense question. As long as you write things that make sense, you should be able to score for this question here. For example, for colleagues, you can write, the programmer should treat colleagues fairly and avoid the act of discrimination. And then we can write, the programmer should help or train colleagues here. And for public, you can just write, the programmer should be honest in making claims about the software, and then the programmer should maintain the security of the public's data here. The programmer writes a program to be used in a business. The source code of the program can be modified by the business. the business pays a programmer for the maintenance and security updates. Identify one suitable type of software license for the program and describe the reasons for your choice. So for this question here, it states that the source code of the program can be modified by the business. Therefore, we can write open source initiative. And then the reason we can write allows program source code to be examined so that the business can adapt or modify the program to meet their needs here. And then explain the reasons why the programmer should copyright their program. So the most important reason for copyright would be to gain formal recognition of ownership. And next is to allow for legal consequences if anyone steals or copies it. A company uses a relational database to store data about its customers, employees, and the individual repair jobs that customers have booked. Explain the benefits of using a relational database instead of a file-based approach. This is the typical question on the difference between relational database and file-based approach, basically asking us why we should use relational database instead of files. So we can write less repeated data to get 1 mark here. To get second mark, we can elaborate further by saying since each item of data is only stored once. And then to get a final mark, we can write data consistency is maintained since changes in one table will automatically update in another. For B, the company decides which employees will work on each repair job. An employee can log into the database to access information about their repair jobs. The database is normalized and includes these tables. Customer stores personal data about each customer. Employee stores personal data about each employee. Login data stores a username and password for each employee. Job stores the data about each repair job. Job employee stores the employees that are working on each repair job. Identify each relationship between the database tables and explain how each relationship can be implemented in the normalized database. To get full 6 marks for this question here, we can start by drawing the ER diagram for all the tables first. Then we can just convert the ER diagram into sentence form. So first we have customer table, then we have the employee table. Next we have the login data table, and then we have the job table. And finally we have the job employee table. So first of all, what is the relationship between customer and job? It's going to be a one-to-many relationship here. Therefore we can just write customer to job is one-to-many relationship. And then to get additional mark, we can write implemented by primary key in customer is foreign key in job. Basically, we are just saying that primary key in customer, let's say customer ID, is the foreign key in the job table. Next, for employee to log in data table here, one employee only can have one login data. Therefore, it's a one-to-one relationship. Therefore, we can just write employee to login data is one-to-one relationship. Next will be the relationship between job and job employee table here. So each repair job can be taken by different employee. Therefore, it's a one-to-many relationship here. So we just write job to job employee is one-to-many relationship. Of course, we can also add primary key in job is foreign key in job employee table. But let's just skip this point for now and move on to the final relationship. The final relationship will be between the employee and the job employee table here. So one employee can take up different jobs. Therefore, it's a one-to-many relationship here. So in the answer, we can write employee to job employee is one-to-many relationship here. And then to get a final mark, we will write implemented by primary key in employee is foreign key in job employee table here. The database also has a table invoice that stores data about each invoice that is sent to a customer. Example data from the table invoice is given. So we have the invoice ID, data sent, amount, paid, and job ID. Write a structured query language SQL script to return the total amount of all the invoices sent in the year 2023 that have been paid here. For this question, we need to return the total amount. So later on, we'll be setting this column here. And the filter condition will be based on data sent as well as the paid status here. Since we have two conditions here, we'll be using an AND statement in the query later on. To return the total amount, we'll use a sum function here. So we'll write select sum bracket from invoice table here. Quite straightforward so far. Then we'll just add the condition in where paid is equal to Y here, meaning that this has been paid here. And then and data sent is more than or equal to 1st of January 2023 here, since we want to have all the invoices in year 2023 here. And finally, and data sent is less than or equal to 31st of December 2023 here. As long as you know how to break down the SQL question, it's actually relatively straightforward to answer this type of question. A student takes a photograph of a science experiment. The photograph is saved as a bitmap image. Define the following bitmap terms here. So for color depth here, we can just write number of bits used to represent a color here. And then for file header, stores data about the image file. Explain why changing the image resolution will affect the image quality and file size here. So for this question here, basically the lower the image resolution, the lower the image quality and smaller the file size. So for image quality, we can write decreasing resolution means details within the image are lost because there are fewer pixels. And for file size, decreasing the resolution will decrease the file size because there are fewer pixels, therefore less data here. Identify one lossless method of compressing an image here. Therefore, the answer here we can just write run length encoding, whereby you can just write how many times each color is being repeated. The student draws a picture on paper that is scanned into the computer and saved as a vector graphic. Define the vector graphic terms, property, and drawing list. For those of you who forget what vector graphic is, just remember all this logo here, whereby you can scale up and scale down without losing quality. So for property, you can just write defines one aspect of the appearance of a drawing object. And drawing list, you can just write stores the command required to draw each object. For question 8, typical assembly language instructions question. I have put a table on the right here for your reference. And now let's look at the question now. The current contents of memory are shown. So these are the values stored in each address here. The current contents of the ACC and index register are shown. Complete the table by writing the content of the ACC and the IX after each set of instructions has run. So basically, we just have to update the content of ACC and IX after we run all these instructions here. For the first instruction here, LDM #19 and then DEC ACC here. So LDM based on the table on the right here is immediate addressing. Therefore, we will load value 19 into the ACC here. So value 19 here. And then DEC ACC, meaning that we will decrease this value 19 by 1 here based on this table here. So DEC subtract 1 from the contents of the register ACC or index register. Therefore, this 19 will be 18 here. And then for IX content, since there's no instruction related to IX here, this IX will remain as 20 here. For the second instruction here, LDD 23 and then add 19 here. So LDD is direct addressing, meaning that we'll load the content of address 23 into the ACC here. So what is in address 23 is 15 here. So we write 15 here. And next, add 19, meaning that we'll add the value stored in address 19 to this 15 here. So what is in address 19 is 25 here. So 25 plus 15 is equal to value 40 here. So same thing again, IX, no changes, so value 20 here. For the third instruction, LDI 25 INC ACC. So LDI means indirect addressing, meaning that we look at the address pointed by address 25. Looking at address 25 here, we have 22 here, meaning that we look at the value stored in address 22 here. What is the value in address 22? It's going to be value 4 here. And INC ACC means that we'll increase this 4 by 1 here, resulting in value 5 here. Same thing again for IX, no changes here, so value 20 here. For the last instruction, LDR #21 means that we will load this value 21 into index register here. And then LDX2 means that we will use 2 plus 21, which is the value in the index register, to get the address 23 here. So what is in address 23 is going to be value 15 here. Therefore, ACC value is going to be 15 here. And then for index register, it has been updated from 20 to 21 here. Therefore, we can just fill in 21 here. The table has 3 sets of instructions. The binary number 1001, 1010 is reloaded into the ACC before each set of instructions is run. Complete the table by writing the content of the ACC after each set of instructions has run. For the first instruction, logical shift left by 2 places here. This is quite easy. Basically, just move everything to the left by 2 places here, resulting in 0110 1000. And next, for the second instruction, add hash 5 and then end hash 30 here. So first of all, we will add value 5 into this binary number here. So I've done the calculation and this is the binary number here. 10011111 after adding 5 into this binary number here. And then we'll just do N30 here. So for 30, I have also converted this 30 into binary number here, which is this one here. 0011110. And then we can just do the AND operations for these two binary number here, resulting in 00011110. For the last instruction, all binary 11110010 INC ACC here. So I've written the equation here. First we have the original number here 10011010 and then 11110010. So after doing the OR operation, we will get 11111010, and finally we have to increase this value by 1 due to this INC ACC here. Therefore the final answer is going to be this one here, 11111011. Explain how bit manipulation can be used to test whether the binary number stored in the ACC represents an odd ternary number. Write the bit manipulation instruction that will be used. First of all, you must know that in order for binary number to be odd, the most right bit here must be 1 as shown here. Basically, it means that for the rest of 7 bits, it can either be 0 or 1. But the first bit from the right here must be 1 in order for the value to be odd here. Therefore, for the explanation, we can just write an odd binary number will have 1 in the least significant bit LSB here. And next, compare the result of masking with binary 1. The result of the comparison will be true if the number is odd, and the instruction will be AND hash 1 here. So it means that to check whether this number is odd or even, we just put AND hash 1. If the result is 1, it's an odd number, and if the result is 0, it's an even number. Feel free to try it on your own using an even or odd number, and you should be able to understand better. A road bridge has a weight limit and a height limit for vehicles. For example, a vehicle must weigh less than 10,000 kg and must have a height of less than 3 meters. The bridge has a warning system. If a vehicle is approaching the bridge and it exceeds one or both limits, a sign displays a warning telling the driver of the vehicle to stop. The bridge warning system uses sensors to detect if a vehicle exceeds the limits. Complete the table by identifying 2 different sensors that could be used by this system and describe how each sensor is used by the system. So for this question here, there are 2 main things to measure. First is the weight, and the other one is the height here. So for height, we can just use infrared sensor, and the explanation we can just write measure or check the height of the vehicle. And for the weight, we can just write pressure sensor here, and the use would be measure or check the weight of the vehicle. Explain whether the bridge warning system is an example of a monitoring system or of a control system. Definitely, this is just a monitoring system, and we can explain it in this way. Monitoring system because there's no use of feedback. To get one more point, we can just write the system does not have any actuators. If you find that you have learned something new from this passive walkthrough, definitely give this video a thumbs up and share to your friends who will benefit from this video. And if you're looking to get the best possible grade for A-level computer science exam in the shortest possible amount of time, feel free to check out my fast track program at www.haguin.school. Thank you, and I will see you again then. Bye bye.